So we're now in differentiation rules, the basic differentiation rules. Sorry, I can't pronounce that well. So for our first rule, we have the constant rule, which states that the derivative of a constant is 0. So any constant that is a number or has or represents a number is equal to 0, just like pi, because pi is a constant, 3.14, so 0. As long as there's no x or x squared, it will be 0. It's like this. The derivative of 10 is 0, the derivative of pi is 0, and the derivative of 50 is 0, because they're all constants. The next one is constant multiple. Constant multiple states that the c times f of x is equal to c times f prime of x. On our example, we have 10x, pi x squared, and 11x cubed. But before we do that, we should learn about the power rules first, which is states that d of x, the derivative of x raised to n, is equal to n times x, or nx raised to n minus 1. So basically, the x squared will be turned into, you will take the n, which is the raised to 2, and move it right next to the x, which you will get 2x raised to 2 minus 1, which will become just 2x. Just like for the g, you move the raised to 1 next to the g, and the raised to 1 will be removed. Hence, the g gets removed too, because g raised to 0 is 0. So there's only 1 left. And now for the f, the derivative of f raised to cube is equal to 3f 3 minus 1, or 3f squared. Now let's go back to constant multiple. That's just basically it, but you will have to move the constant to the other side of the derivative sign, and then you will multiply it back. So 10x will be 1 times 10 equals 10, and pi x squared, you'll move the pi to the other side, and then the x squared will stay, so we could get power ruled. And you get 2x. If you multiply them, you will get 2 pi x, and that's it. And now for the 11x cubed, just like what we did before, we move the 11 to the other side, and we power rule the x cubed. Now we multiply them back, which is 33x squared. Now let's move on to the addition rule. For the addition rule, it states that the derivative of f of x plus g of x is equals to f of x prime plus g of x prime. And these are the examples. So basically, before you add them, you must take their prime or derivative first, then you can add. So let's take the derivative of 6x squared and the derivative of 13x cubed, and then add them together. So 6x squared is 12x, and for 13x cubed is 39x squared. Then just add them, or sometimes you just keep it as is and rearrange it. And the derivative for the next one, the derivative of 14x and the derivative of 12x squared. That's 14. Now, it'll be just 14. And for the 12x squared, it will be 24x. And now you just rearrange it, and that's it. The subtraction rule states that the f of x minus g of x is equal to f prime x minus g prime x. It's basically the addition rule, but for subtraction. So there's 6x squared minus 13x squared. You have the derivative of 16x squared is 12x, and the derivative of 13x squared would be 26x. And then you subtract them, just like this. 26. That'll be 14, negative 14x. And that's the final answer. And for another example, we have 15x minus 6. For that, we have the derivative of 15x, which is 15, and the derivative of negative 16, which is just 0. So your answer would be 15. It's like that. 6 will be 0, and it'll just be 15 left. Now for sine and cosine, for this, you have to check other sources, because this one is kind of a bit of a long one. But essentially, it states that the derivative of sine x is equal to cos x, and the derivative of cos x is equals to negative sine x. You can get it by using limits from the first video. Goodbye.